this? It is so freaking loud out. Okay, hi. So today we're talking about moving to New York, moving to New York City in 2021, which of course is still going through some of the aftermath of the pandemic. Things are not quite back to normal right now. However, I have some advice to share with you if you really want to move here in 2021, because I did it in 2020 during the pandemic when it was pretty brutal here. So I have some advice, and keep in mind this is more advice for apartment hunting in New York City during this time, this special time. I would love to make another video about, like what you need for an apartment, actually take you apartment hunting, finding roommates. I can bring all that, but this is very specific to how do you navigate this in our current time. So I moved into this current apartment December 2020. That was a really interesting experience. Basically, if you're a fellow New Yorker, I can only assume that you treat Street Easy as a pastime like I do. However, in 2020, I was especially eager to look at Street Easy because obviously everybody was leaving during the Great Migration or whatever in March 2020. Everybody fled from New York. The students were not here because the schools were closed. Everything was closed. Nothing was open, okay? Like grocery stores were barely open in March. It was crazy. Since everybody was leaving, that means that apartments are now vacant. No one's living here. So when there's a surplus of apartments, what are the landlords gonna do? How are they gonna fill those apartments? They have to lower the freaking rates. Since there were so many new places, I was dying to know what they were costing. And they were crazy low, to the point where I was seeing that I could have a shiny new apartment in a neighborhood like downtown, amazing area, for incredible prices. And they weren't, stupid tiny, they weren't dingy, they weren't dirty, they were nice places that I otherwise would not have been able to afford. I mean, these were places that were always out of my budget that were suddenly doable 2-bedroom apartments. So my roommate and I took note of this, started looking at apartments pretty soon after that. In October and November, we were apartment hunting. The interesting thing about that is some places you weren't allowed to visit. They were just virtual tours or just photos. They would do the 3D thing. So it's like you're in there. But a lot of places we actually were able to see. I actually had friends who moved in July and we were able to view those with masks and, just staying distant from each other. But you got to see the apartment to move, and these landlords are desperate to get people in there, so realtors and brokers were showing these places. Saw a bunch of places. We did have a little bit of drama, some stuff fell through, but that always happens, right? The deals though, guys, like we were seeing 3 bedrooms for the price of 2. I mean, they were just throwing in a free freaking bedroom. That never happens here. Like, because we were looking at November, December, they were offering the rest of 2020 free. We were having things where we could move in early. I mean, it was just like whatever you wanted, it was kind of there. That doesn't mean some things couldn't have been shady. That doesn't mean some things weren't good deals. But overall, dramatic drop in the prices. So we acted on it. We were able to actually knock off $600 off the asking price for a rental. We just said, okay, how about X? And it was $600 lower, and they thought about it, and they let us do it. And we got to pay the net effective price every month. Basically what that is they're offering a month or 2 free in order to deduct from the gross rent, but you only get to not pay in those 2 months, and then the rest of the months you're paying what's probably out of your budget. So for example, I get 2 free months out of the year, but I have to pay $2,800 every month, whereas instead I'd rather not have those 2 months free and just pay $25 month after month. Stuff like that. So we got to pay the net effective, which is the lower price every single month, which they can say no to, and they didn't, so that was amazing. What we could not do, however, was secure a long-term lease. You know, we were really striving to do a 2-year on anything we really liked. I mean, anything decent, honestly. You should always ask. I mean, if you like the apartment, if you love the apartment, see if you can get a 2-year, because I don't know who's a fan of moving, especially in Manhattan, but it's brutal. The less you have to move, the better. Some people don't mind. I've moved a lot in the city, okay? But we wanted someplace where we could stay comfortably for at least 2 years and not have to worry about getting kicked out in a year. So do the 2-year if you can. Unfortunately, we couldn't do 2-year for this current place, but some places were saying yes. So always, always ask, even if you can do 1.5, okay? So I was looking at a Douglas Elliman report. The current inventory of apartments right now in Manhattan is triple than last year, okay? So there's still a lot of vacant places that need to be filled. You can still get in on a low rate right now. So what I would recommend for you, see if you're overpaying. If you live in New York right now and you're like, should I be moving? Should I be getting a good deal and live the place, the neighborhood I wanted to live in? Go on Street Easy, compare rentals in your neighborhood, in your area. Yeah. If your building isn't budging, your landlord's not budging at all, you're in a position to ask for some concessions, okay? You can ask him to lower your rent. You can ask him for new appliances or something. Ask for something, because he or she knows that if they don't compromise in some way, there are plenty of other places that are competing with them. If you are overpaying and you've been waiting for a reason to get out, I say do it. Like, go live in a different neighborhood. You're gonna get a great deal. If you don't want to leave and you just want to pay less, you need to just ask your landlord. The worst they're gonna do is say no, okay? And if they say no, you can leave. So the next question for you is, what are your goals? Do you have a more short-term philosophy when it comes to renting in Manhattan, or is it more long-term? Are you looking for something stable, or do you not mind hopping around year after year? If you don't mind moving, the biggest advantage for you here is to find somewhere you probably wouldn't be able to afford otherwise and lock in this crazy rate, live in a sick apartment, live in a sick neighborhood, enjoy that year. And if you can resign again and still afford it, wonderful. But the problem is, you might not be able to afford it after that year. Yes, the market will steadily climb, but there might be a point where you're like, okay, I can't afford this anymore. And that kind of stinks. If you don't mind and you're like, I will move year after year, then go for it. This is kind of a crazy opportunity. If you want something stable and you want something where you can live there for a long time, look for something that you can already afford. And then you're gonna get the next year, potentially the next year, potentially the next year, we don't know how many years, at a crazy low rate. And then when things climb back up to normal, you already know you could afford the apartment. So you're still saving, but you're not risking having to move out because you can no longer afford it if the landlord asks for more, which they can. Just saying. So let's go over the pros and cons. The pros. You are in a position to ask for concessions from your landlord. They know they need to keep their tenants, and the ones who are gone, they need to fill those rooms. You can negotiate more than ever. If you know that a building has like 4 vacancies, negotiate with that, okay? You have leverage. They need to get these filled, and you know that they're not filling them, okay? The other benefit is that more neighborhoods and more apartments are becoming more accessible to a greater demographic. I mean, this could be you. You could be living in an area you didn't think you'd ever be able to live in, or, you know, it would take you a longer time to get there. You can live in some really exciting neighborhoods that were too pricey for majority of people to live in before. So that's pretty fun. If you want to just have a fun year and get to know a new area in the city, do it. The other pro is that I would say there's slightly less competition, okay? Slightly. It's still competitive. Things still go very quickly here. However, listings are staying up longer, like an extra 10 days, which is a long time here, okay? So you have a little more time to see the place, like think about it. You don't have to like sign right then and there. I remember one of my apartments here, we saw the place, and when we walked out, there were 5 other people waiting outside to like view the place, and so we did the application as we walked away. That's how competitive it normally is. Cons. It's gonna be hard to find a long-term lease. I believe. In my experience, it was tricky. Think about it. It's not advantageous for the landlords to lock you in at a low rate for a long time, okay? They want the rents to come back up as soon as possible. Now, you may have a landlord that their philosophy is it's better to have you there for a long time than to not, but I doubt it. So keep that in mind. You might not be able to get a 2-year. You might not be able to live there 2 years, but 1 year is standard. There are places that will do less than a year. Don't do that. Also, it's important to note, this could be a con for you. It could also be a pro. The biggest rent drops are happening downtown versus uptown. East side and west side, but it's mostly happening downtown. And that kind of goes into my next point. There's a reason for this, and it's because you're getting a different value living downtown versus uptown. Uptown, you're gonna have more space. You're gonna have more quiet, okay? More trees, less nightlife. Downtown, smaller apartments, more bars, more restaurants, more nightlife, less space. Seriously, I mean, the places down here are so small. Smaller the apartments, the bigger price drops we're seeing, because what happened, everyone left New York because we were all gonna be quarantined in home. No one wants to be working from home in a shoebox. So those places are very empty right now because people are home. And if you're out all the time and partying and working and whatever, like your crash bed's your crash bed, but when you have to work from home and be here all the time, you're gonna realize you don't like living in a teeny tiny. Unless you do, that's cool. Then this was like made for you. So in conclusion, is it worth it to move to New York City in 2021? Hell yes, I think so, hell yes. For renters, it's a great price. If you wanna be here, it's the cheapest it's been in a long, long time. I don't think, we're ever gonna see something like this again. And it may only be 1 year, but I think it'll be a little longer. You'll probably be able to enjoy the ballpark range you start at for maybe the next 2-3 years. So if you want to be here, come on down. Come on down. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to check out my blog, zoobizoo.net. The link is in the description. I post new content every Monday, so like and subscribe this video and leave a comment.